have you ever felt, or do you ever feel like you might become involved, or that your risk is higher for becoming involved in terrorism attacks because of your travel?
I definitely do feel that I have a higher risk of being exposed
Okay.
just because I travel a lot and because I'm an American who travels a lot. So,
So you see personally on a level when you're in these other countries that people don't really,
they don't necessarily like you.
they don't like us?
You know, not in most countries. You'll experience a lot of that.
Okay. Do you know any information about the terrorist attacks? Like, have you heard when you travel about things that are going on, or?
Quite a bit. I work a lot out of Germany, and when we had those stabbings and the gentleman that axed a few people on the trains, that was just like an hour and a half away from where I work, from my mainline station. Yeah.
Okay.
So I see a lot of stuff like that, actually.
Have you been involved in kids or anything when it comes to that? Like, did you see them or talk to them?
Not personally, but they are around, just like adults, they're around.
Okay.
And unfortunately, they're exposed to it as well.
Okay. I found a couple facts about it, and it said that there have been approximately 90,000 total terrorist attacks worldwide throughout the time period of 2006 to 2013. The statistics were distressingly high in the early 2000s due to the terrorist attacks by Al Qaeda on the United States and the wars in the Middle East during that time period. When you're in these other countries, how do you communicate with them? Just normally, like if it involves food and travel and stuff, or?
Yeah, communication's pretty basic for the most part. A lot of people usually, surprisingly, they speak English.
Okay.
For the most part, like I said, but communication is pretty to the minimum, actually.
Why is that?
It's hard getting around and making a point with other people, and it is pretty stressful when you go and you cycle through like 7 different countries in a week, and then you gotta, focus on their customs and what they believe in and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. So sometimes it's just easier to kind of hang by yourself.
Okay. Have you ever had threats made to you?
Surprisingly, I did on a train incident that I had when I was commuting from one station in Germany to another station in Germany.
Okay.
And,
you can keep talking, sorry.
Yeah. And it was definitely uncomfortable, and I would not like to live it again.
Can you explain a little bit about what happened?
I was commuting from work, and these 2 Syrian gentlemen, came up to me and approached me at the train station, and they claimed that they were confused about how the train system operates. And they said they knew I was an American just by the way I dress, which surprisingly you do know Americans versus locals when you're in Germany.
Okay.
And it kind of escalated from there, where they were following me, and then German Special Investigations with the German Air Force and the U.S. Air Force had to get involved later, and they had to actually find the 2 gentlemen to interrogate them further, because there was other specific information that was provided by these gentlemen that hinted towards being linked with ISIS, essentially.
Oh, that's so scary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in circumstances like that, you said that you don't really specifically interact with children regularly on your job, correct? It's just kind of like when you're in the country.
Not very often. Only usually when I'm in the countries commuting.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about coping mechanisms and emotional support during, there was a circumstance where you were involved, or if you knew people, specifically children that were involved in cases where terrorism had occurred, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So coping mechanisms, can you tell me what you normally do to cope with stress in your life? Granted, your job's going to be extremely stressful. Your relationships, long distance, that's got to be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not home all the time. So what do you normally do to cope with stress?
I think I like to stay busy and do a lot of busy work. So that might actually not be a good thing, because it's hard to learn how to wind down and relax when I do come home, and it's very uncomfortable when I come home.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of fill it with a lot of that. I fill the void with busy work or I do a lot of like driving around and stuff like that. So
And you started working out more.
yeah, I started to go to the gym and try to get healthy habits into my life.
Okay, and that's awesome. Working out, it's really great. It's a healthy way to cope with stress. In circumstances where you're not able to do that, like when you're on flights and stuff like that, statistics say that breathing techniques and small, like muscle relaxation techniques can be extremely beneficial. That slow, deep breathing in through your nose, holding it for a couple seconds, then exhaling through your mouth. That's going to be extremely beneficial for you, specifically while you're traveling like this, like the way that you are. You know, here, children in other countries have a tendency to be more oblivious to the constant crime acts that are occurring in their environment because it's more common to them. They're not aware of the reasoning behind why things happen. Crime, terrorism. They're more vulnerable to the acts of crime and terrorism because they are so oblivious to why it's going on. Can you think of any therapeutic coping mechanisms that they could use as children? Providing emotional support, support systems, stuff like that.
I'm not really sure. I'm not too familiar with children, to be honest with you. But I think it's really hard for kids to understand that there's bad people in this world. So I'm really not even sure how I would approach children in that situation because people do such unexplainable things.
And because the culture is so different.
And cultures are extremely different as well. Yeah.
Right. Do you notice, probably not with use of the children thing, in different cultures, they're not as open, you know, to speaking with their kids about stuff like this sometimes, and I feel like America is so different from other countries, so it's hard to explain about how families over there would react with their children.
Right.
You know, they say that art is a really huge benefit, especially for kids. They can express themselves in an art form, so that if they don't have that support system that they can, at least it's expressing it and it's not creating negative habits. Do you think that you could list or name 3 or 4 people that you yourself would be able to get a hold of in a good support system if you had to?
I definitely think Scott, my boyfriend, is a great support system for me. He definitely is always there and takes really good care of me.
Okay.
Obviously you. And I have quite a few coworkers that I work with that can relate to me on a personal level when it comes to my job because we work together so often.
So you both
That are
experience
and they're very available to talk almost all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, because all of us have experienced the same things. So.
Okay. What do you think are your most common fears that are associated with your job, or just people that are in the communities that you work in?
I definitely am afraid of being caught up in some sort of terrorism crisis quite frequently, especially when I'm traveling in the Middle East or in Europe. And after that train incident in Germany as well. So I think that is one of my biggest fears is being caught in a bad place, in the wrong place at the wrong time kind of scenario.
Okay.
Or being targeted. And that does happen. So I think that would be my biggest fear. Right, yeah. And that's my biggest fear of being stuck in a situation where you're kidnapped, murdered, or Lord knows what else would happen.
You said at one point that there was actually a guy that it happened to.
Yeah, we did have a gentleman who had an issue in Russia, or in Latvia, which is next to Russia. It's an Eastern European country that's primarily Russian for the most part. We did have an incident where one of our guys did get kidnapped and beat pretty badly. Actually, 2 of our guys got beat pretty badly when they were over there, so it happens.
Do you feel like different coping mechanisms might be able to help you with that? You know, like say without having the anxiety, as much anxiety when you go there. I feel like no matter what, when you go to these other countries, it's going to happen. But do you feel like knowing that you have people that you can talk to, like that can help you a little bit?
Yeah, I certainly feel that way. I certainly feel that way. A good support system definitely helps. It goes a long way.
Okay, you have family and friends and stuff with that.